Captain Hyunwoo Kim stood on the bridge of the Soul's Pride and watched the massive crystal structures of the NIGMA homeworld grow larger through the view screen. The planet looked like someone had dropped 1,000,000 diamonds into space and let them grow wild. Tall spires of pure crystal reached up from the surface, each one singing with a different musical note that somehow traveled through the vacuum of space. The whole world hummed with harmonies that made his teeth ache. "Sir, they're responding to our arrival," said Communications Officer Dal-Soo Park, pressing his headphones tighter against his ears. "The sounds are getting stronger." Hyunwoo nodded and straightened his blue diplomatic uniform. He had traveled 3 months through space to reach this place, carrying a message that could prevent a war. The message was simple, but the stakes were enormous. Either the NIGMA Dominion would listen to Earth's warning, or millions would die. Behind him, Dr. Yoonji Park checked her data tablets one more time. She was Earth's top expert on alien species and had spent years studying the NIGMA from afar. Her black hair was tied back in a practical bun, and her lab coat was covered with coffee stains from the long journey. She looked tired but determined. "Remember, they communicate through sound frequencies," she said to Hyunwoo. "Every word they speak creates vibrations that carry meaning beyond just the words themselves. They might find our speech crude and simple." Commander Jae-Sung Lee stood near the weapons console, though all of Soul's Pride's weapons were powered down as a sign of peaceful intentions. His military uniform was crisp, and his posture was perfect. But Hyunwoo could see the tension in his shoulders. Lee had read all the intelligence reports about NIGMA military power. The aliens controlled over 200 star systems, and their crystal ships could reshape themselves during battle. "Captain, we're receiving docking instructions," announced Navigation Officer So-Young Kim. "They want us to approach the main diplomatic spire." Through the view screen, Hyunwoo could see the spire they meant. It was a crystal tower that stretched up from the planet's surface like a needle made of pure light. Ships of various alien species were docked around its base, their hulls gleaming in the light from the crystal formations. "Take us in slowly," Hyunwoo ordered. "No sudden movements." As Soul's Pride approached the docking station, Hyunwoo felt the weight of his mission. 3 weeks ago, NIGMA scout ships had been spotted near the Kepler line, the invisible boundary that marked the edge of human space. Earth's government had sent clear messages telling the NIGMA to stay away, but the alien scouts kept getting closer. Then came the reports that made everyone on Earth nervous. The NIGMA were massing a huge fleet just beyond human sensor range. Intelligence suggested they were planning to cross the Kepler line and expand into human territory. Earth's leaders decided to send one final warning, delivered in person so there could be no misunderstanding. The docking process took an hour, because the NIGMA station used magnetic fields instead of physical clamps. Hyunwoo watched alien technicians work on the hull through his view screen. They looked like walking crystals, their bodies made of translucent material that glowed with inner light. When they moved, they created musical notes that harmonized with each other. "Docking complete, Captain," reported Engineer Taemin Choi. "Atmospheric readings show their air is breathable for humans, but Dr. Park recommends we keep our breathing masks ready just in case." Hyunwoo gathered his diplomatic team in the shuttle bay. Besides Dr. Park and Commander Lee, he had brought diplomatic aide Mi-young Choi, a young woman who spoke 17 languages and had a gift for understanding alien cultures. Her job was to help prevent any cultural misunderstandings that might make negotiations fail. "Remember, we're here to deliver a warning, not to threaten," Hyunwoo told his team. "Earth wants peace, but we need to make it clear that we will defend ourselves if necessary." The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and they stepped into a corridor made entirely of crystal. The walls, floor, and ceiling were transparent, allowing them to see the vast city spreading out below. NIGMA citizens moved through crystal tubes and platforms, their bodies creating a constant symphony of musical notes. Their escort was a NIGMA official who introduced himself as Resonance Keeper Thelkar. He was taller than the humans, with a crystal body that shifted between blue and green colors as he spoke. His voice sounded like wind chimes mixed with a deep bass note. "Welcome, carbon-based visitors," Thelkar said, his voice creating ripples in the crystal walls around them. "The High Resonance Council will hear your words, though they wonder why a single system species thinks it has anything important to say." Dr. Park stepped forward and activated her translation device. "We appreciate the Council's time," she said carefully. Our message comes from all of Earth's governments working together. Thelkar's body flashed with what might have been amusement. All your governments? How many could a single world possibly have? The question revealed how little the NIGMA understood about humans. They saw Earth as just one planet with one voice, not realizing that humanity had spent centuries learning to work together despite their differences. The council chamber was a massive crystal dome where sound waves created visible patterns in the air. 12 NIGMA officials sat in a circle, their bodies resonating with different musical tones. At the center sat the prime harmonizer Velthak, an ancient being whose crystal body was so clear it was almost invisible. "Speak your words, small beings," Velthak said, his voice deep enough to make the floor vibrate. "The Dominion has little time for the concerns of primitives." Hyunwoo stepped forward and activated his message recorder. A hologram appeared showing star charts and military data that Earth's scientists had prepared. "The Kepler line marks the boundary of human space," he said clearly. "Any NIGMA forces that cross this line will be considered an act of war." The crystal beings around the chamber created a sound like breaking glass mixed with laughter. War singer Krathmol, whose body was a dark red crystal, spoke up with obvious mockery in his harmonic voice. "You threaten us? You control one small system while we rule 200 worlds. Our crystal dreadnoughts can crack planets and our fleets number in the thousands. What could soft carbon creatures possibly do to stop the might of the Dominion, Doctor?" Park activated her second set of data tablets, showing detailed analyses of human military capabilities. The information included everything from ship designs to tactical doctrines, all laid out clearly for the NIGMA to study. "These records show our defensive capabilities," she said. "Earth hopes this information will help the Dominion make an informed decision about whether to test our resolve." Prime Harmonizer Velthak barely glanced at the data before dismissing it with a wave of his crystal hand. "Primitive weapons and crude tactics," he said. "The Dominion has faced and conquered species far more advanced than yours." Commander Lee tried a different approach. "Perhaps we could arrange military exchanges or joint training exercises," he suggested. "This would allow both sides to better understand each other's capabilities." "There is nothing to understand," War Singer Krathmol replied, his voice creating sharp crystal spikes in the air around him. "We have studied your species from afar. You are weak, divided, and technologically inferior. Your single system will fall within days once we choose to take it." Myung Choi made one final attempt at diplomacy. "The NIGMA Dominion has a reputation for being reasonable and just," she said. "Surely there's enough space in the galaxy for both our species to expand without conflict." Velthak's response was final. "Space belongs to those strong enough to claim it. Carbon-based life is a temporary phase that the universe will eventually outgrow. The Dominion will expand as it sees fit, and no primitive species will dictate terms to us." The meeting was over. As Hyunwoo and his team walked back through the crystal corridors to their ship, they could hear the NIGMA officials creating harmonies that sounded like celebration. The aliens were already planning their invasion of human space. Back aboard Soul's Pride, Hyunwoo sent his report to Earth. The message was brief but clear. Diplomacy had failed, and the NIGMA Dominion would cross the Kepler line within 30 standard days. Earth needed to prepare for war. As their ship pulled away from the crystal homeworld, Dr. Park stood beside Hyunwoo on the bridge. "They have no idea what they're about to face," she said quietly. Hyunwoo nodded grimly. The NIGMA saw humans as weak primitives, but they had never seen what humans became when their survival was threatened. Earth's warning had been delivered clearly and honestly. Now it was up to the Dominion to decide whether they would heed it or learn the hard way why humanity had survived everything the universe had thrown at them so far. Admiral Dong-Hyun Park watched the sensor displays on the bridge of Busan's Fury as red dots appeared at the edge of human space. 3 weeks had passed since Captain Hyunwoo Kim returned from the NIGMA homeworld with news that diplomacy had failed. Now the alien fleet was crossing the Kepler line just as Earth's leaders had feared. "Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, reported sensor operator Young Jin Lee. Multiple NIGMA vessels estimated count 47 ships including 3 of their large crystal dreadnoughts. Dong-Hyun studied the tactical display while his crew prepared for battle. The NIGMA ships looked like flying cathedrals made of crystal, their surfaces reflecting starlight in rainbow patterns. Intelligence reports said these vessels could reshape themselves during combat, making them unpredictable opponents. Signal Captain Sojin Yoon to move her stealth frigates into position, Dong-hyun ordered. Tell her to wait for my command before attacking. 10 kilometers away, invisible to NIGMA sensors, Captain Sojin Yoon commanded a squadron of Earth's newest stealth ships. The vessels were painted matte black and used advanced technology to absorb enemy sensor beams instead of reflecting them. Her crew had trained for months to fight an enemy they hoped they would never face. Captain, we're picking up their harmonic communications, reported Communications Officer Woo-jin Kim. They're coordinating their advance using musical frequencies. So-jin nodded and checked her weapons status. Her frigate carried nuclear torpedoes and particle beam cannons, but she wondered if conventional weapons would be effective against crystal ships. The NIGMA vessels seemed to glow with their own internal power sources. At Proxima Station, the first human outpost in the contested zone, Lieutenant Tae-ho Kim received urgent orders to evacuate. The small research station housed 50 scientists and technicians who had been studying the nearby star system. Now they were directly in the path of the NIGMA advance. All personnel to escape pods, Tae-ho announced over the station's communication system. This is not a drill. As the evacuation proceeded, Tae-ho uploaded critical data from the station's computers to a secure transmission burst aimed at Earth. The information included detailed sensor readings of NIGMA ship movements and communication, patterns that might help human forces understand their enemy better. The first NIGMA ships reached Proxima Station just as the last escape pods cleared the docking bay. Warsinger Krathmol, commanding from his crystal flagship, ordered the station, destroyed as a demonstration of Dominion power. Let the carbon creatures see what happens to those who stand in our way, he said, his harmonic voice creating crystalline spikes of light around his command chamber. The station exploded in a brilliant flash as NIGMA energy weapons tore through its hull. Tae-ho's escape pod tumbled through the debris field while automatic transmitters broadcast the destruction to human forces throughout the system. Back on Busan's Fury, Admiral Dong-hyun received the transmission and felt anger burn in his chest. The NIGMA had not just crossed the line they had been warned to avoid, they were destroying human installations without even attempting to demand surrender first. All ships. This is Admiral Park, he broadcast to the human fleet. Execute protocol. Turtle Shell immediately. Protocol Turtle Shell was Earth's defensive strategy designed by General Won-sik Han and his Tactical Planning Committee. Instead of meeting the NIGMA in direct battle, human forces would conduct a fighting withdrawal while laying traps and obstacles for the advancing enemy. As Dong-hyun's fleet pulled back toward the inner system, they left behind automated sensor, buoys, and defensive platforms. These devices were designed to look like navigation markers or communication relays, but they were actually weapons that would activate when NIGMA ships came within range. Captain Sojin Yoon received new orders to begin harassing attacks on the NIGMA rear guard. Her stealth frigates appeared suddenly out of empty space, fired their weapons, and disappeared again before the crystal ships could respond. Target the smaller escorts first, Sojin told her squadron commanders. We want to make them nervous and force them to spread out their formation. The hit-and-run attacks worked exactly as planned. NIGMA commanders began keeping their ships closer together for mutual protection, which made their advance slower and less efficient. Warsinger Krathmol grew frustrated as his fleet's progress slowed to a crawl. On the research station, Incheon's, Hope Dr. Subin Park worked frantically to analyze captured NIGMA technology. 2 days earlier, one of Sojin's frigates had recovered debris from a damaged crystal ship. The alien materials were unlike anything humans had seen before. The crystal matrix responds to specific frequency vibrations, Subin reported to her research team. If we could generate the right harmonic resonance, we might be able to disrupt their ship systems. Engineering Chief Hai-Jin Lee coordinated the activation of hidden defensive systems throughout human space. For decades, Earth's military had been secretly installing weapon platforms inside asteroids and building hidden bases in places where enemies would not think to look. Defensive Grid Alpha is online, Hai-Jin reported to Fleet Command. Grids Beta and Gamma will be ready within 6 hours. The NIGMA fleet advanced deeper into human territory, but their progress became increasingly difficult. Communication jamming stations disrupted the harmonic frequencies they used to coordinate their ships. Gravity mines hidden in asteroid fields damaged several of their vessels. Automated defense platforms fired missiles from concealed positions, and then shut down before return fire could destroy them. The carbon creatures fight like cowards, war singer Krathmol complained to his bridge crew. They strike from hiding and run away instead of facing us in honorable battle. What the NIGMA did not understand was that humans had learned long ago that honor was less important than victory. Earth's military doctrine emphasized winning by any means necessary, rather than following rules that might result in defeat. Admiral Dong Hyun continued his fighting withdrawal, trading space for time while his forces inflicted maximum damage. On the advancing NIGMA fleet, human ships would appear just long enough to fire their weapons before disappearing into the sensor shadows created by jamming stations. Captain Min-Soo Yoon, commanding the destroyer Soul's Hammer, led a particularly successful attack against a NIGMA supply convoy. His ship emerged from behind a small moon, destroyed 3 crystal transports with nuclear torpedoes, and escaped before the escort vessels could respond. Confirmed kills on 3 enemy supply ships, Min-Soo reported to Fleet Command. Enemy formation is showing signs of disorganization. The constant harassment and unexpected attacks began to wear down NIGMA morale. Their ships were designed for direct combat against enemies who would meet them in open battle. The human strategy of avoiding direct confrontation while striking from unexpected directions was something they had never encountered before. Dr. Subin Park made a breakthrough in her research when she discovered that NIGMA crystal matrices became unstable when exposed to specific acoustic frequencies. Working with acoustic engineer Bo-Ra Kim, she developed a weapon that could generate the necessary sound waves to disrupt enemy ship systems. If we can get close enough to transmit these frequencies directly into their hulls, we can cause catastrophic resonance failure, Subin explained to Admiral Dong Hyun during a secure communications session. The Admiral immediately ordered several Yi ships modified to carry the new acoustic weapons. The modification work was done at hidden shipyards built inside hollowed-out asteroids where NIGMA sensors could not detect the activity. War singer Krathmol pressed his advance despite mounting losses and supply problems. Prime Harmonizer Velthak had ordered the human system conquered within 10 standard days, and failure was not acceptable in NIGMA culture. Increase the pace of advance, Krathmol ordered his fleet commanders. The carbon creatures cannot maintain their cowardly tactics indefinitely. But as the NIGMA fleet pushed deeper into human space, they encountered increasingly sophisticated defenses. Entire asteroid fields had been converted into weapon platforms. Gas giant moons contained hidden military bases. Even the empty space between planets was filled with sensor networks and automated defensive systems. Lieutenant Tae-ho Kim, now serving aboard a replacement vessel after losing his station, participated in a daring raid against a NIGMA communication ship. His team captured intact equipment that revealed important information about enemy command structures. They coordinate everything through harmonic frequencies, Tae-ho reported after analyzing the captured data. If we can disrupt their communications at the right moment, their whole fleet will lose coordination. The information was immediately transmitted to Dr. Subin Park, who began working on a way to jam NIGMA communications across an entire star system. The project required precise timing and coordination between multiple human facilities. As the second week of fighting continued, it became clear that the NIGMA advance was slowing significantly. What should have been a quick conquest was turning into a grinding battle of attrition that favored the defending humans. Captain So Jin-yoon's stealth frigates had destroyed or damaged over 30 NIGMA vessels through hit-and-run attacks. The enemy was now keeping heavy escorts with every ship, which further slowed their advance and consumed resources. Captain Ji-hoon Yu stood in the command center of New Seoul Colony as NIGMA crystal ships appeared in the sky above the settlement. The alien vessels looked like floating cathedrals of pure light, their harmonic engines creating musical notes that made the ground vibrate beneath his feet. But Ji-hoon was not afraid, because he knew something the NIGMA did not understand about human nature. All civilians to designated positions, he announced over the colony's communication system. Initiate total resistance protocol immediately. What the NIGMA expected to find was a helpless civilian population that would surrender without a fight. What they actually encountered was something that had never existed in their experience, a society where every member was a potential warrior. In the agricultural sector, farmer Sang-wook Lee was already implementing the plans he had practiced for months. His farming equipment included massive excavators and chemical processing plants that could be quickly converted into weapons. Within hours of the NIGMA landing, he had turned his fertilizer supplies into explosive devices and his irrigation systems into delivery mechanisms for toxic gas. "Remember, we're not just defending our homes," Sang-wook told his fellow farmers over their communication network. "We're showing these crystal creatures what happens when they threaten human families." The first NIGMA landing party consisted of 50 crystal warriors who expected to face frightened civilians. Instead, they found themselves under attack from improvised weapons that no military strategist had ever planned for. Farming robots armed with cutting tools attacked from the grain fields, while explosive charges hidden in storage silos destroyed their landing craft. In the colony's school district, teacher Ga Eul Choi was leading her students through emergency procedures that looked like a field trip but were actually military operations. The children, ranging in age from 8 to 16, had been trained to use the colony's maintenance tunnel system for guerrilla warfare. "Stay quiet and move in single file," Ga-eul whispered as she led 20 students through the underground passages. "Remember, we're not trying to win battles. We're trying to make the invaders afraid to go anywhere." The students carried supplies and equipment through the tunnels to resistance fighters positioned throughout the colony. They also planted surveillance devices that allowed the human defenders to track NIGMA movements in real time. To the alien invaders, the children looked harmless, which made them perfect intelligence operatives. Factory worker Young-hee Kim had spent her entire career building civilian equipment, but the skills that made her good at manufacturing also made her excellent at creating weapons. Her factory normally produced water purification systems, but the same equipment could create chemical weapons or process raw materials into explosives. "Production Line 3 is now making improvised rocket launchers," she reported to the Resistance Command Center. "Production Line 7 is working on chemical irritants that should disrupt NIGMA harmonic communications." The NIGMA ground forces found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Every building contained hidden weapons. Every civilian was a potential combatant, and every piece of infrastructure had been converted into a tool of war. War singer Krathmol watched the reports from the surface with growing confusion. His crystal warriors were supposed to be conquering a civilian settlement, but they were taking casualties from attacks that came from unexpected directions using weapons that should not exist. "How are agricultural workers destroying our combat units?" he demanded from his tactical advisor. The answer was that humans had spent generations preparing for this moment. Earth's government had created detailed survival manuals that every colony received, teaching civilian populations how to resist invasion using whatever resources they had available. In orbit above New Seoul Colony, Admiral Jin A-song was preparing to reveal humanity's greatest secret. For decades, Earth's military had been building ships and bases in locations where enemy scouts would never think to look. Now it was time to show the NIGMA that humanity was much more than a single system. "Species, all units, this is Admiral Song," she broadcast on a frequency that reached across the entire star system. "Execute Revelation Protocol. Let them see what Earth's children have become." From asteroid fields that had seemed empty, massive human warships emerged from concealed positions. Captain Woo Jin Kim commanded a dreadnought that had been built inside a hollowed-out moon, its weapons powered by the moon's own gravitational field. The ship was larger than anything the NIGMA had ever seen, its hull bristling with weapons that could crack planets. "This is Moonbreaker Actual," Woo Jin announced to the NIGMA fleet. "You have 10 minutes to withdraw from human space, or we will demonstrate why Earth warned you to stay away." Commander Siri Park led swarms of fighter craft that emerged from hidden bases built into asteroid surfaces. Her pilots had trained in the vacuum of space itself, learning to fight in environments that would kill most species. Their ships were small and fast, designed to overwhelm larger vessels through sheer numbers. "Launch all fighters," Siri ordered as her asteroid base opened like a mechanical flower. "Show them what a real swarm looks like." Hundreds of human fighters poured out of concealed positions throughout the system. The NIGMA had expected to face a small defensive fleet, but instead they found themselves outnumbered by craft that seemed to appear from empty space itself. Dr. Yeon-hee Han coordinated the deployment of the frequency disruptor weapons that Dr. Subin Park had developed. The weapons were installed on ships throughout the human fleet, ready to turn the NIGMA's own harmonic communication systems against them. All ships, prepare to transmit on frequency 77 Alpha, Dr. Han announced. Let's see how they, like their own music, played back at them. When the frequency weapons activated, the effect on NIGMA forces was devastating. Their crystal ships began to vibrate uncontrollably as harmonic resonance patterns tore through their hulls. Several smaller vessels literally shattered like wine glasses exposed to the perfect musical note. War singer Krathmal felt his own flagship shudder as the harmonic attack disrupted his ship's crystalline matrix. For the first time since the invasion began, he experienced something the NIGMA had not felt in centuries: fear. Impossible, he said, as his tactical displays showed human ships emerging from everywhere at once. Intelligence reported they had only a few dozen vessels. The truth was that humanity had militarized everything they could reach. Every asteroid, every gas giant moon, every seemingly empty patch of space contained human installations. Earth's children had spread throughout their system like seeds, taking root in places where other species could not survive. Engineer Kyung-soo Park had spent years working in the asteroid mining operations that other species considered too dangerous for civilian activity. But humans were comfortable working in vacuum, extreme temperatures, and high radiation environments that would kill most aliens. This adaptability had allowed them to build military installations where no enemy would expect to find them. Mining Platform 7 is now Weapons Platform 7, Kyung-soo reported as his installation revealed hidden missile launchers, targeting NIGMA supply ships moving through Sector 4. The asteroid miners had converted their industrial equipment into weapons of war. Rock cutters became particle beam cannons, ore processors became missile factories, and transport ships became heavily armed cruisers. Within hours, the NIGMA found themselves fighting an entire industrial infrastructure that had been secretly preparing for war. Captain Hyun-woo Kim, who had delivered Earth's original warning to the NIGMA homeworld, now commanded a task force of ships that emerged from the outer system. His vessels had been hidden beyond the range of enemy sensors, waiting for the moment when they would be needed most. "This is Captain Kim to all NIGMA forces," he broadcast on their harmonic communication frequency. "I delivered Earth's warning 3 weeks ago. You chose not to listen. Now you will learn why humans keep their promises." The NIGMA fleet found itself surrounded by human forces that seemed to have appeared from nowhere. Every direction they turned revealed new ships, new weapons, and new threats. What should have been a simple conquest was becoming a nightmare of coordinated resistance. On the surface of New Seoul Colony, the civilian resistance was proving just as effective as the space-based military forces. Farmer Sang-wook Lee had successfully destroyed an entire NIGMA landing zone using explosives made from agricultural chemicals. Teacher Ga-il Choi's students had provided intelligence that allowed resistance fighters to ambush enemy patrols with devastating effectiveness. "The carbon creatures fight with their entire population," reported a NIGMA ground commander to war singer Krathmal. "There are no civilians, only warriors who use different tools." This was the fundamental misunderstanding that doomed the NIGMA invasion. They expected to fight a military force and then control a civilian population. But humans did not separate their society into fighters and non-fighters the way other species did. When threatened, every human became whatever they needed to become to ensure survival. Factory worker Young-hee Kim's improvised weapons were proving particularly effective against NIGMA crystal warriors. Her chemical irritants disrupted their harmonic communication abilities. Prime Harmonizer Velthok stood in his crystal throne room on the NIGMA homeworld and listened to war singer Krathmal's desperate reports from human space. The invasion that should have taken days was failing after weeks of fighting, and now the ancient leader of the Dominion faced a choice that would determine the fate of his entire civilization. "Send everything," Velthak ordered, his harmonic voice creating crystalline formations in the air around him. "Every ship, every warrior, every weapon we possess. The carbon creatures must be crushed before other species see our weakness." Command went out across NIGMA space through harmonic transmitters that could reach dozens of star systems instantly. Massive harmonic devastators, crystal ships the size of small moons began moving toward human territory. These vessels could crack planets with pure sound, turning worlds into asteroid fields with a single focused harmonic pulse. Fleet Singer Morthak commanded the largest Devastator, a ship called the Crystal of Infinite Resonance that had destroyed 17 worlds in previous NIGMA campaigns. His crystal body was ancient and powerful, glowing with the accumulated harmonic energy of 1,000 battles. Finally, we will show these primitives the true power of crystal and song, Morthak said, as his massive ship entered the void between stars. Their single system will become a memorial to the folly of opposing the Dominion. But as the NIGMA reserve fleet moved through deep space toward Earth, they passed through a region that their sensors showed as empty vacuum. Unknown to them, this was where humanity's greatest secret had been waiting for decades. Admiral Kang-Ho Lee felt the familiar sensation of returning to normal space as his ship, the Void Walker, emerged from dimensions that most species did not know existed. Around him, dozens of other vessels materialized from the deep dark, their hulls scarred by journeys through regions of space where physics worked differently. Home Fleet, this is Lost Fleet Actual, Kang-Ho broadcast to Earth's military command. We have returned from the deep void and are moving to intercept NIGMA reserve forces. The Lost Fleet had been presumed destroyed 20 years earlier when they disappeared during a deep space exploration mission. In reality, they had discovered ancient alien ruins in the void between galaxies and learned technologies that changed the fundamental nature of their ships and crews. Captain Dalsu Kim commanded a vessel that could phase in and out of normal reality, becoming temporarily invisible and intangible before returning to strike at enemy ships. His crew had learned to exist partially outside normal space-time, making them nearly impossible to target with conventional weapons. Phantom Squadron, prepare for phase assault, Dalsu ordered as his ship approached the NIGMA reserve fleet. Remember, we exist between the spaces where they can see us. Commander Sun-hee Park led a squadron of fighters whose pilots no longer needed traditional life support systems. Years of exposure to void energies had changed them at a fundamental level, allowing them to survive in the vacuum of space using only lightweight environmental suits. Void Squadron, deploy for external assault, Sun-hee commanded as her pilots prepared to leave their ships and attack NIGMA vessels directly from outside their hulls. Show them what humans become when we adapt to the impossible. The NIGMA fleet detected the approaching Lost Fleet ships, but could not understand what they were seeing. The human vessels appeared and disappeared randomly, seemed to ignore basic laws of physics, and carried energy signatures that matched no known technology. Unknown vessels approaching on impossible vectors, reported the sensor operator aboard Morthak's flagship. Their movement patterns suggest they are not operating under normal space-time constraints. Fleet Singer Morthak studied the tactical displays with growing concern. In his 1,000 years of experience, he had never encountered anything like these mysterious human ships that seemed to exist partially outside reality itself. Back in Earth's solar system, the battle for humanity's survival was reaching its climax. Prime Harmonizer Velthak himself had arrived aboard the ultimate NIGMA weapon, a devastator called the Song of Ending that could destroy entire star systems with a single harmonic pulse. Behold the power of true harmony, Velthak announced as his massive ship took position near Earth's sun. This system will become silent forever, a testament to the price of defying the Dominion. But Earth's defenders were ready with surprises that the NIGMA leader could never have imagined. Engineer Bong-sik Yoon had spent days converting civilian transport ships into guided missiles, filling their cargo holds with nuclear explosives and antimatter charges. Kamikaze Squadron, this is Engineer Yoon, he broadcast to volunteer pilots throughout the system. Today we show them that humans will sacrifice everything to protect our home. Hundreds of civilian volunteers piloted their converted ships directly toward NIGMA vessels, their sacrifice ensuring that critical enemy ships would be destroyed. The sight of ordinary humans willingly dying to protect their species sent shockwaves through the NIGMA fleet. Dr. Haewon Kim coordinated the activation of Earth's ultimate defensive weapon, a planet-wide network of communication satellites that had been secretly modified to generate harmonic frequencies. When activated simultaneously, the satellites could create a sound wave powerful enough to disrupt NIGMA coordination across the entire solar system. All satellites are online and synchronized, Dr. Haywan reported from the command center buried deep beneath Earth's surface, preparing to transmit the harmony of human defiance. The satellite network activated with a sound that seemed to come from Earth itself, a deep harmonic note that resonated through space and interfered with every NIGMA communication system in the solar system. For the first time in their history, the crystal beings found themselves unable to coordinate their forces through their traditional harmonic methods. Captain Insu Park piloted his damaged fighter toward Prime Harmonizer Velthak's flagship, his ship's hull torn open by enemy fire. But his determination unbroken. His communication system was destroyed, but his weapons still functioned, and he had enough fuel for one final attack. For Earth, for humanity, for everyone who comes after us, he whispered, as he aimed his fighter at the command section of the massive NIGMA ship. His sacrifice damaged the flagship's harmonic generators and gave Earth's defenders the opening they needed. Throughout the solar system, similar acts of heroism were taking place as humans refused to accept defeat. When their ships were destroyed, they continued fighting in environmental suits. When their weapons ran out of ammunition, they used tools and improvised explosives. When facing impossible odds, they found ways to turn their very existence into weapons. The Lost Fleet arrived at the moment when Earth's defenses seemed overwhelmed by NIGMA numbers. Admiral Kang Ho Lee's ships materialized throughout the enemy formation like ghosts returning from the dead, their exotic weapons tearing through crystal hulls that had seemed invulnerable. Captain Dalsu Kim's phasing ship appeared inside Morthak's flagship, its weapons firing at point-blank range into critical systems before disappearing again. The attack left the massive Devastator helpless as its harmonic generators overloaded and its crystal structure began to crack. Commander Sun Hee Park's pilots swarmed over NIGMA ships like insects, using cutting tools to slice through crystal hulls and plant explosive charges directly against enemy power cores. The sight of humans surviving in open space without traditional life support horrified the crystal beings. Impossible, Fleet Singer Morthak said as his ship shuddered under attacks from enemies who seemed to exist outside normal reality. How can carbon-based life forms adapt to the void itself? The answer was that humans had been changing themselves to survive in environments that would kill other species. The Lost Fleet crews had gone beyond normal human limitations, becoming something new while remaining fundamentally human in their determination to protect their home. Prime Harmonizer. Velthak watched his invasion fleet fall apart around him, as human defenders proved capable of feats that violated everything the NIGMA thought they knew about carbon-based life. His ultimate weapon, the Song of Ending, was surrounded by human ships that attacked from impossible angles using weapons that should not exist. They fight like the void itself has claimed them, Velthak said, as his flagship's defenses failed under the combined assault of conventional Earth forces and the otherworldly Lost Fleet. What manner of species continues to evolve during battle, Dr. Haewon Kim's satellite weapon reached full power and transmitted a harmonic frequency that caused crystal ships throughout the system to vibrate dangerously. Several smaller NIGMA vessels actually shattered from the resonance, their crews scattered into space as their crystalline bodies lost cohesion. Engineer Bong Sik-yoon's kamikaze squadron had eliminated most of the NIGMA heavy cruisers, while the surviving volunteers turned their attention to the massive devastators. Even damaged civilian ships could inflict serious harm on the crystal giants if their pilots were willing to sacrifice themselves for victory. Target the harmonic resonators, Bong Sik ordered as he piloted his own converted freighter toward the Song of Ending. If we can disrupt their main weapon, Earth survives. His ship, Prime Harmonizer. Velthak lay dying in the wreckage of his command chamber aboard the Song of Ending, his crystal body cracked and leaking the harmonic energy that had sustained him for over 1,000 years. Around him, the remains of the NIGMA invasion fleet drifted through space like broken glass, their hulls shattered by weapons and tactics they had never imagined possible. "We were wrong," Velthak whispered into his failing communication system, his voice creating weak harmonics that barely registered on NIGMA receivers throughout the galaxy. The humans are not like other species. They do not just defend, they adapt, they endure, they become whatever the universe demands of them. His final transmission reached the NIGMA homeworld where the remaining leaders of the Dominion listened in shock. The greatest military force in their history had been destroyed by a single-system species that they had dismissed as primitive carbon-based creatures. The impossible had become reality. Admiral Myung-Soo Lee stood on the bridge of his flagship as human forces regrouped in the aftermath of their victory. The battle for Earth was over, but the war was far from finished. Intelligence reports indicated that NIGMA forces still controlled dozens of star systems, and humanity could not allow the threat to remain. All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Lee, he broadcast to the surviving human ships. Prepare for immediate pursuit operations. We will follow the enemy back to their territory and ensure this never happens again. The decision to carry the war into NIGMA space was not made lightly. Earth's leaders understood that defensive victories were temporary, but decisive action could prevent future conflicts. Captain Yoon-Young Kim led the first reconnaissance missions into former enemy territory, her stealth ships gathering intelligence on NIGMA defensive positions. Multiple crystal installations detected in the Vega system, Yoon-Young reported as her sensors mapped enemy positions. Estimated garrison strength is minimal, probably rearguard forces left behind during the main invasion. What her ships discovered was a dominion in collapse. The NIGMA had committed their entire military to the failed invasion of human space, leaving their own territory vulnerable to counterattack. Worlds that had been secure for centuries now faced the prospect of human occupation. General Tae-min Park coordinated the implementation of Operation Eternal Vigilance, Earth's plan to establish permanent monitoring stations throughout former NIGMA territory. The operation was not about conquest, but about ensuring that no future threat could develop without human knowledge. We are not here to rule other species, General Park explained to his field commanders. We are here to make sure that no one, ever again, mistakes human warnings for empty threats. The first human monitoring station was established in the ruins of a NIGMA military base in the Alpha Centauri system. Dr. Soo-Jin Lee led the diplomatic team that negotiated with surviving NIGMA officials, offering them a choice between cooperation and continued resistance. The Dominion's military power is broken, Dr. Lee explained to Resonance Keeper Thelkar, who had survived the destruction of the invasion fleet. But Earth has no interest in ruling your people. We want only to ensure that the lessons of this war are never forgotten. The terms offered by humanity were surprisingly generous considering their total victory. NIGMA worlds would retain their independence under human protection, but they would also host monitoring stations that could detect any future military buildup. The crystal beings would trade their dreams of expansion for the security of survival. Captain Hyun-Woo Kim, now promoted to Admiral, returned to the NIGMA homeworld aboard the same ship that had delivered Earth's original warning. This time, the Soul's Pride was escorted by a fleet of human warships that demonstrated the consequences of dismissing diplomatic warnings. The circle is complete, Hyun-Woo said, as he watched the crystal cities of the NIGMA homeworld grow larger on his view screen. We came in peace and were rejected. Now we return in victory to offer peace again. The new Prime Harmonizer, a young crystal being named Thelvia, met the human delegation with the humility that comes from witnessing the complete destruction of everything her people had believed about their own superiority. The meeting took place in the same crystal chamber where her predecessor had dismissed human warnings just months earlier. The Dominion accepts Earth's terms, Thelvia said, her harmonic voice carrying notes of sadness and resignation. We have learned the price of arrogance and will not repeat the mistakes that led to our defeat. Engineer Min-Ho Choi established humanity's first permanent base in the former NIGMA capital system, a space station that would serve as both a monitoring post and a symbol of human presence. The facility was designed to be self-sufficient and capable of detecting military activity across dozens of star systems. Monitoring Station Alpha is fully operational, Min-Ho reported to Earth Command. We can track ship movements and communication patterns throughout this entire sector of NIGMA space. The children who grew up on the monitoring stations represented a new generation that would inherit the responsibility of maintaining peace. Young Yoo-Jin Park learned to speak both human languages and NIGMA harmonic frequencies, becoming part of a generation that could communicate across species barriers. The Crystal people are not evil, Yoo-Jin said during one of her school lessons. They just forgot that other species could be dangerous too. Our job is to help them remember without being mean about it. Throughout the former Dominion, human Monitoring stations became centers of cultural exchange, as well as military observation. The presence of human families on these bases demonstrated that Earth's intentions were peaceful rather than exploitative, which helped former enemies accept their new reality. Commander Ju Hwan Kim commanded one of the deep space monitoring stations that watched the edges of former NIGMA territory. His job was to ensure that no other aggressive species decided to take advantage of the Dominion's weakness to expand into the region. Long-range sensors are detecting movement in the Rigel sector, Ju Hwan reported during a routine intelligence briefing. Appears to be ships from the Keth-Tar Alliance testing our response to border violations. The message was clear. Earth's victory over the NIGMA had established humanity as a major power in galactic politics. Other species were watching to see how humans would use their new influence, and some were already testing the boundaries of acceptable behavior. Admiral Hyunwoo Kim's response was swift and decisive. A human fleet appeared in the Rigel sector within hours, demonstrating that Earth's military reach now extended far beyond their original solar system. The Keth-Tar ships withdrew immediately rather than risk the same fate that had befallen the NIGMA. Let the word spread throughout the galaxy, Hyunwoo broadcast on frequencies that reached multiple star systems. Humanity keeps its promises, whether they are offers of friendship or warnings of consequences. Choose your interactions with us accordingly. Dr. Soo-Jin Lee worked to establish formal diplomatic relations with dozens of species that had previously ignored or dismissed humanity. The victory over the NIGMA had proven that Earth was no longer a minor player in galactic affairs, and many governments wanted to establish friendly relations with the new power. The irony is remarkable, Dr. Lee noted during a diplomatic conference. The NIGMA's attempt to conquer us has made humanity more influential than we ever would have become through peaceful expansion alone. The monitoring stations served their purpose well, detecting and deterring several potential threats before they could develop into serious conflicts. The presence of human observers throughout the region created a stabilizing effect that benefited all species in the area. Engineer Min-Ho Choi expanded the monitoring network to include early warning systems that could detect the buildup of aggressive military forces anywhere in the region. The system was designed to give Earth months or years of advance notice if another species decided to test human resolve. Prevention is better than victory, Min-Ho explained to his engineering team. If we can stop wars before they start, everyone benefits. The NIGMA themselves adapted to their new reality with surprising grace. Many crystal beings found that freedom from the pressure to constantly expand their territory allowed them to explore artistic and scientific pursuits that had been neglected during their military phase. Young Eugene Park grew up to become one of the first human NIGMA cultural ambassadors, helping to heal the wounds left by the war while ensuring that its lessons were preserved for future generations. Her work demonstrated that former enemies could become friends when both sides learned from their mistakes. My parents fought in the war, Eugene said during a speech at the memorial erected for all who died in the conflict. But I work for the peace that their sacrifice made possible. This is how we honor both the dead and the living. Commander Ju Hwan Kim continued his watch from the edge of former NIGMA space, his sensors constantly scanning for threats that might emerge from the deep void. His dedication represented the eternal vigilance that humanity had accepted as the price of peace. Earth's warning was clear, he said during a routine log entry. The NIGMA dismissed it and paid the cost. Now the galaxy knows that human promises are not empty words but statements of fact. We will maintain this watch for as long as necessary to ensure that the lesson is never